half. It's like you're using a long straw where we're starting to reach the bottom of the glass. The same thing is happening in the agricultural regions of China. We're familiar with Australia. So if these major agricultural areas, if things do not change here, this is going to lead, we believe, to the next food crisis, and we're talking about between now and 2025. What do we think are the major root causes of food and nutrition insecurity? First of all, protectionism in agriculture. 2, low investment in rural development. 3, the use of food crops for biofuels that was mentioned earlier. And 4th, what I just mentioned, the water scarcity crisis. The OECD countries, and here I'm talking particularly about the US and EU, spend $360 billion a year on agricultural subsidies. These are subsidizing the farmers of the US and the EU and disadvantaging developing country farmers who can't compete on the same level as subsidized farmers. For instance, for our company, it's cheaper actually to buy starch in the Ivory Coast made from potatoes in the EU than it is to buy locally manufactured starch made from cassava. And there's only one reason for that. It's agricultural subsidies. So this helps to continue the poverty and undernutrition among the 1 billion developing country farmers. This is really where, as we know, the most severe nutrition problems exist. There are some hopeful signs. This year at the G8 summit, the leaders pledged $20 billion in aid to poor countries for agricultural development over the next 3 years. This was viewed as a major breakthrough, but this is only the beginning of what's really needed to invest in rural development. We also see countries like China, Middle Eastern countries, buying up large amounts of land in the developing world. This is obviously aimed at helping to preserve the nutrition security of those countries. What impact will this have on agricultural efficiency, on food availability, is still not clear. Food crop-based biofuels. 30% of the 2008 U.S. corn crop was used for biofuels, and according to FAO, 2/3 of the price increases in 2008 were due to food-based biofuels, primarily corn in the U.S. If this continues, there would be a 25% shortfall in grain by 2025. Biofuels have a second impact, and it goes back to water. It takes, to produce 1 liter of biodiesel, it takes 9,000 liters of water. To produce 1 liter of bioethanol from corn takes 4,000 liters of water. So we're using scarce water resources to try to replace petroleum and think that we're being environmentally responsible, when in fact quite the opposite is true. And this isn't just the U.S. Countries around the world are developing goals for biofuels. Now I'm talking here about food-based biofuels, and that's the problem. And to us, this is a misplaced policy that needs to be changed because of the food security issue as a result of the water problem. Food is water. Every day what we eat, we're eating really liters of water. For U.S. consumers, about 9,000 liters a day that it takes to grow the food if you're a meat-eating American. If you're more like an Indian and vegetarian, it takes 3,000 liters of water per day. What do I have? Ah, sorry, right. Just move the decimal point to the left one, if you would. So biofuels are water, but also solar energy is water. We're reading now of big solar panel farms that are competing with agriculture because it takes water to cool those acres and acres of solar panels. So water has to be factored into really everything that we do if we want to avoid a future food security crisis. Very briefly, what can business do? Well, first of all, speak out on these issues. We've been a long-time opponent of EU and US policy in food subsidies. We've been a long-time opponent of biofuel being made from food. We've been a long-time proponent of rural investment by major countries. And four, we've been trying to call attention to this water issue. We'd like all businesses to be doing this. Through the UN Global Compact, we've formed a CEO water statement that is now spread to about 50 companies, but we think the water issue needs to be raised much higher if we're going to truly impact the food security issue. The other thing is to look at a company value chain and help to create nutrition security starting from the farm right through to the consumer products. There need to be more investments in small-scale farmers. It's relatively easy to raise income, eliminate malnutrition, and protect water with very basic farmer education and technical assistance. We work directly with about 600,000 farmers in about 30 countries, and the impact on their livelihood, reduction of malnutrition, productivity, and environmental responsibility is really phenomenal. This includes about 30 million microcredits and helping them develop clean water wells and giving nutrition education in the villages where we source milk. We've also just opened a new agriculture R&D center in Abidjan, Ivory Coast, to improve variety of cereals and cash crops, give assistance to farmers, and this is in collaboration with West African governments, starting with the Ivory Coast. On the east side of Africa, we're taking these same dairy programs that we've developed in Brazil, starting in the 1920s, India, China, and starting to do this now in East Africa in collaboration with the Gates-funded program there. Factories. We have about 480 factories. They're almost all located in rural areas. About half of these are in developing countries. And they're really out in the middle of nowhere to be close to the source of agricultural raw materials. And these become platforms for rural development. And first of all, skilled workers. And we aren't going to stop or at least reduce the flight to the cities unless we can get skilled jobs in rural areas, developing local suppliers, education on how to be successful small businessmen, developing infrastructure, roads, etc. These are important economic investments that really change the economic development of rural areas. At the same time, we have to reduce our water consumption, and we've reduced our water consumption by about 59% in the last 10 years per ton of product, even though we've increased our production actually by close to 70%. The last area, and this we're going to have a separate session on Wednesday at noontime, is developing research-based food products with micronutrient fortification. This was dealt with extensively this morning in the presentations. I won't go into a great deal of detail here, but for instance, we have iodine-fortified Maggi cubes, which in West Africa alone, we sell 19 billion cubes per year. Almost every family throws 2 or 3 or 4 Maggi cubes into the pot, and this has resulted in a significant spread of iodine availability to the population. Currently we're the largest fortifier of foods in the world, but what we want to do is to bring these down to a lower cost point so that through our research we are developing foods that are lower cost,